Could I ask everybody to have a seat, please? We're trying to start. Thank you.
You see where the real authority in the room is. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us for the October 22nd meeting of the Regional Transit Board of Directors. Would the clerk please call the roll to establish a quorum?
Director Budge?
Here.
Director Hansen?
Here.
Director Harris?
Here.
Director Hume?
Here.
Director Jennings?
Here.
Director Miller is marked as being absent. Director Morin?
Here.
Director Natoli?
Here.
Director Chenier? Director Cerna is marked as being absent, and Chair Kennedy.
Here.
With that, we have a quorum at 95 votes.
Will you please
This
join?
meeting.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. This meeting of the Sacramento Regional Transit District will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel. Tonight's meeting will air on October 24th at 6 p.m. and on October 26th at 6 p.m. and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. It is also closed caption. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker card located at the rear of the room and provide it to me or Adam. Please speak into the microphone and state your name for the record. We would appreciate everyone turning off their cell phones. Thank you.
Thank you. Will you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is the consent calendar, items 1 through 12. And I do not have any speaker cards for any of the consent items.
Okay, we have a motion, a second, and can I make sure there's nothing that anybody wants to discuss or to remove? Okay, with that, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
Motion carries at 95 votes. The next item is item number 13, resolution conditionally approving annexation of the city of Folsom into Sacramento Regional
Cindy,
Transit.
I believe we have not on the agenda first.
Oh, you're so right. Thank
And it's
you.
so rare that that happens.
Oh, no.
Thank you. Yes, actually. First, Helen O'Connell, please. Does Helen have a microphone?
Yes, coming.
Hello, board. I was just at the unmet needs hearing this afternoon, and I figured out that I would like 40% coverage increase and 60% frequency, so that we would have a happy medium of both worlds. And I still believe if there's a bus on Monday, there should be a bus on Sunday. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you for participating in the meeting today. Jeffrey Tartagia.
Board members, I will be quick because I'm going to leave here for the 3G meeting at the convention center. But this weekend rode the brand new buses of the 1536 and 1537. The 36 bus was a very nice 51 ride. On the way back, I had a rodeo ride, and I felt twice the, shall we say, shocks bottom out. I have a concern that our new buses will not have the lifespan that our old buses did have. I just bring that to your attention. And what Helen was talking about is some of us participated in the route optimization, and I firmly believe that coverage is better than, shall we say, high frequency, because the high frequency as proposed doesn't seem to cover either transportation centers and only seems to offer you one way to get someplace. And if there is any disruption of that, it's moot for public transportation, and I don't see it having the ability, and this is something you'll see in November talking about, but I encourage you to start looking at what is out there with SAC Forward to understand what it offers you and what it provides you with. The other thing is in your minutes, what the discussion with Mike Lonigan was about was the texting 411, and he seemed to think it was the mobile app with the 411 involved with it. It's just a clarification of what you've got in there of minutes of last meeting. And the last thing I will say is Don Natoli is probably the only person here that probably was on the board in 1992. And that's where, back in 1992 is where the, shall we say, Jarrett looked back and saw when Portland, Oregon came up with how all of the bus routes and light rail would work in coordination in 15 minutes to make a connection. The claim is now that that's not possible because of traffic. I really would like to see staff come back and show that it's not at all possible with the lesser routes of what they're proposing from the 45 or 47 down to the high coverage of, I think it's 37 routes. And the high frequency is only 18 routes. I see real problems with that. But please, you guys are the ones that need to look into that and understand that. And with that, I leave you off, and I'm off to the next meeting.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I'm sure Director Natoli appreciates that.
Jeff, I've been here a long time, but not since 92, only since 97, so.
Well, you were there for 2000.
Yeah, I was, yeah.
All right, Mike Barnbaum.
Thank you. I had the opportunity, along with several other folks, to attend the stakeholders meeting on September 27th and put in a few hours at the Creekside Community Fair just yesterday afternoon with staff on the SAC RT Forward. If you see in the brochure, there are going to be several places around the service area to provide outreach and receive public input, and that was just happened to have been one of them. And as I was available to help and assist yesterday, considering all the additional time Monday through Thursday and Saturday, I have to be over at Florin Perkins and Belvedere to fulfill work orders for a very important contract we're working on. But on that note, I really studied very carefully both networks and asked and even spoke both with Laura Fickle of the Power In Alliance and first daughter of the board of directors, Sinead Kennedy. If I were,
She'll love her new title, by the way.
yeah. Oh, she knows about it. We talk about it a lot during work hours.
All right.
And at breaks and lunches. If I were in your shoes and it was presented to me the high frequency, high ridership versus the coverage, what would I make a motion to? And it would have to be the high coverage, simply because the high coverage has a route extension to the airport, a route which we'll talk about in an upcoming item over Greenback and Madison to the Gold Line, the Delta Shores Shopping Center, as well as the Power In Alliance area. When we flipped over to the high ridership, high frequency area, all of those were gray and did not receive any service. What's concerning about that is an unmet transit need is not necessarily one where there isn't high frequency, it's one when there's no service. And I've been through a lot of the iterations of those hearings over the years with SACOG staff and PCTPA. And they will always say frequency is not an unmet transit need. No service would always be. So let me just say in closing, I'm sorry if I'm going to go over time. My motion would be to approve the high coverage and direct staff to meet with possible opposition groups like Howard Jarvis and Ion Sacramento and have a frank conversation about the real need to have a new local or additional local funding source. If you remember the exercise we went through with the streetcar, in which a director said, "What? You almost made me fall over backward on my seat." And we can convince the opposition to favor something, then there would be more of a higher percentage likely to vote in favor of a new or an extended measure than not.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Don't go way too far, though.
Okay.
Next.
New business, item number 13, resolution conditionally approving annexation of the city of Folsom into Sacramento Regional Transit District and the associated annexation agreement, presented by Brent Berniker.
Mr. Breniger.
Thank you. Thank you, Cindy. Good evening, Chair Chenier and members of the board.
Chenier.
Ah, geez, I apologize. Whoops.
That was even 2 chairs ago.
God. Way to start it out, right? All right. Sorry.
Yes, apparently.
Sorry. Chair Kennedy. Today, Sacramento Regional Transit has a great opportunity to solidify a strong partnership with the city of Folsom by entering into this annexation agreement. Bringing this item forward exemplifies the spirit of the two agencies with the goal of bringing about true regional transportation services. By moving in this direction, SAC-RT will no longer just contract for light rail services, but actually be the operator of the light rail, bus, and dial-a-ride service. And before I go into the details, I'd actually first like to start out with a big thank you to Director Andy Morin for his openness and his leadership in this process. It's been very helpful. In addition to Andy's support, I'd also like to extend a big thanks to the City of Folsom staff and the employees that assisted in this process. And in fact, we have the City of Folsom's city manager here, Elaine, if you could stand up, and also Matt, who's the transit manager, chief. So they're there. Thank you guys for your support. We really appreciate it. We've had a lot of really good, productive meetings, and if this moves forward, I imagine many more to make a strong transition. So before I get into this, I think I'd like to provide a little bit of insight into why this topic has come up. Over the past 6 months, we've been doing a lot of active searching for grants and funding. When we were going through that funding round, we learned that applying for these 2 state grants, which we refer to as the TIRCP and the Congested Corridor grant, we needed a strong partnership, so we worked with the City of Folsom when applying for that, and by doing that, we were able to receive an $85 million award between the 2 funding sources. This grant, as you know, is going to assist in replacing the 20 light rail cars and provide construction funding for the 15-minute service between Sunrise Station and the historic Folsom. Through those meetings with the granting agencies, the most important lesson we learned from them was a consolidated effort will give a much greater impact and results if we actually work together and improve. By working together, we'll be able to show a larger impact in the region, and being able to do that will show that transit opportunities will impact a larger population, and by doing that, you'll get a greater probability of receiving funding. So if we can come together as one transit agency instead of separately competing for these funds, we have a much better opportunity at receiving these funds. The second reason for annexation was when you have 2 separate agencies, you have duplication of costs. By bringing these two agencies together, we can improve transferability, but we can also improve in the efficiencies that are associated with some administrative and operating costs. And by doing that, you're able to turn that money and provide it back to the public through service. So now I'd actually like to go into some of the high-level points for this discussion. The first area, which is the concern to most riders, is always service. So from a service perspective, right off the bat, we'd like to say there's going to be no changes to the City of Folsom's service. They'll continue to operate as it is. Currently, they operate 3 routes, which is a dial-a-ride service for those 55 and older, and they have 30-minute light rail service. The service will not decrease, assuming there's no significant funding changes. In fact, through this annexation agreement, we actually will be able to provide a little bit of additional services to the City of Folsom residents that qualify as paratransit riders. Currently, those riders can only receive paratransit service within the city limits. Under the annexation, they'll be able to expand out and go throughout the city of Sacramento and the county of Sacramento as well, and other cities, I should say. So it expands their area of reach. The next topic I'd like to talk about is the fare perspective. There's no plan changes for any fare changes. But one thing that we did notice when we talked to the staff and kind of looked at the different fare structures is there's some actual immediate benefits. Currently, a city of Folsom resident does not have the ability to pay for a transfer or does not have the ability to use our mobile app on a single ride basis. So under this annexation, we'd actually be able to make some improvements. Residents would be able to buy a single mobile fare app or use their Connect card and ride the system, both systems, for 90 minutes. So they could transfer between both systems, which is a really big benefit. Also, customers that are paying with cash can pay an additional 25 cents and they can transfer to and from the bus and rail. So that's an immediate benefit that would be baked into this. The next area that we looked at is from a revenue, assets, liability, and fund balance perspective. All transit-related revenues would come directly to SAC-RT. Any assets, liabilities will transfer to SAC-RT, and any prior fund balance. We're still working with the City of Folsom to determine the exact amount of the prior fund balance, but right now it's looking around the $1 million range, and it could be even greater. One of the caveats, though, is that fund balance must be used for the City of Folsom for their service or any kind of capital costs. But with that in mind, if it is for service, we already have some good ideas that we'd like to bring forward. Additionally, to meet the service demands, we've also extended employment options for all the bus operators and 3 of the administrative staff. The terms that we've offered should provide for better net pay and greater funding opportunities, future opportunities, excuse me. From a facilities perspective, SAC-RT will be responsible for maintaining the bus stops, shelters, and this will be done through a combination of effort between our staff as well as the city has an outside vendor that also assists. In regards to seeking input, we always need to seek input from the public. So the City of Folsom staff as well as SAC-RT worked together and created an open house. We sought public input. The feedback that we received were really, like I said, around the questions of service, fares, and what was the reason for doing this. And I've covered that earlier in this presentation. So we were able to provide those same answers to them. And also we were able to talk about the future plans that we have through the ROS and the moving Sacramento forward into, with these new services that we have. The next topic I want to talk about is the voting perspective. From a SAC-RT board perspective, it's important to understand that this annexation will require a reallocation of the votes. So to bring on the City of Folsom, the director from the City of Folsom's vote would increase from 3 votes to 10 votes. The City of Sacramento's votes would actually be reduced from 36 to 34. Sacramento County's votes would go from 42 to 37. And the City of Rancho Cordova, Citrus Heights, and Elk Grove would remain the same. So looking ahead, we wanted to make sure that you saw these terms and brought forward a conditional approval. We'll actually be the City of Folsom will actually be presenting this to their board tomorrow. We'll be present there to show support for that as well. So pending approval from both agencies, the plan right now is, if this moves forward, to bring a transition into early in first quarter of 2019. So we're thinking February or March that we'd actually make that final transition. So with that being said, staff is seeking conditional approval for the annexation agreement with the City of Folsom.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I have a couple comments. If you, this is really a great moment. I just want to first thank our 2 governing bodies, the City Council of Folsom and the RT Board, for you guys' visionary leadership. And also I want to thank the lots of community stakeholders and from the Folsom, the business partners, and there's a downtown partnership in Folsom and other community leaders. And the rest of this county, lots of our transit advocacy groups, they give us lots of support. And out of all those type of support, one particular thing I really want to mention is the staff on both sides. We made this happen only within 2 months, and we made this within 2 months time frame. we did lots of outreach and lots of meetings, and we did this thoroughly and professionally and respectfully. Today with us is our City of Folsom City Manager, my good friend Elaine, and she demonstrated extraordinary, outstanding leadership in terms of how to build partnership, and we learned a lot from her and her team, and also SACRD team, Brent and the whole other many other staff. We worked days and nights and weekend to make this happen. So I just want to thank both our partner from the city and our own staff for the hard work and for the dedication. So I would like to invite city manager from Folsom to speak for a couple words, if you mind.
Yes, please.
Hello, Chair Kennedy and members of the RT Board. My name is Elaine Anderson. I'm the City Manager for the City of Folsom. I just wanted to extend my thanks to Henry Lee and the outstanding RT staff team that has been working with the outstanding Folsom staff team on the potential annexation agreement. We have felt heard and respected from day one in this process. Our top two non-negotiable deal points was that customer service levels in terms of transit were to be maintained or augmented, and that our staff were to be held harmless in terms of our transit staff. And I can say that this annexation agreement honors those terms and many more. We feel that this annexation helps usher Folsom into a brand new era of transit opportunities that frankly I don't think we could achieve moving forward on our own. So we're excited to kind of take things to the next level, and we again thank everyone involved and appreciate your consideration.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and the Vice Chair and Director Moran, can we take a group picture with the staff?
Should we make an action?
Yeah, let's vote so we're smiling in the photo.
I want to get that vote first.
All right. You want to go before? Director Morin?
Yeah, and not to repeat a lot of the, the great things that have been said here. And the way I viewed this, this has been bandied about both here at Regional Transit in the city of Folsom for probably 15 years as far as looking for an opportunity to do this. And it's been alluded to, there's a regional benefit, there's economy of scale. And the way I always look at this is, what's good for the region is good for Folsom. We don't have to do everything in our own little world and assume it's going to be the best, and we don't here now. And I'll just finish with what's been important to me as far as really beginning to push this is I would not be supportive of this if it wasn't for this board that I've been working with for, a number of many years, and also the current regional transit staff. 5 and 10 years ago, we were struggling to kind of really get the upward trajectory of the capabilities of this agency rolling along, and I think all of us up here feel like there's been tremendous progress. And so for me, it makes consideration of pushing this forward and also, imploring my colleagues to support this as well as my city council colleagues tomorrow night, because I really, truly believe in my heart of hearts that this is good for the region, and which means this is good for the city of Folsom. So with that, I'll go ahead and make the motion to move this item, of course, with other.
Second.
It's been made and second, and we do have one public comment card. Is there anyone else from the board that would like to speak? Vice Chair Hansen.
I can go after Mr. Barnwell.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you. Mike Barnbaum.
Thank you, Chair Kennedy and members of the board. Alluding to what CEO Henry Lee said, this is a very defining moment in the future of regional transit and the city of Folsom. It is also hopefully a guiding principle and guidebook, if you will, looking to do things like this with additional cities on the board that are not quite yet full-fledged members of the regional transit district, but still are independent to some degree or another. To what the city manager said, it helps to augment or even improve service as one of the conditions on this matter between RT and the city of Folsom. As shown from earlier, it does show in the high coverage network an extension of Route 1 into the city of Folsom. And to maybe help explain it a little bit, Route 1 would have high frequency as it does today, bless you, from Watt and I-80 to Sunrise Mall via Auburn and Greenback at every 15 minutes. But during that 15-minute service in the high coverage network, one bus would end at Sunrise Mall. 15 minutes later, a bus would extend on Greenback to the historic Folsom station. 15 minutes later, a bus would terminate at Sunrise Mall. And 15 minutes later, a bus would travel via Sunrise and then Madison Avenue over to the historic Folsom station. And it would cycle through that way based on the route descriptions in the appendix report in the SAC-RT Forward website. So it's very detailed and explained by Jarrett Walker what this route would do in the high coverage network, whereas in the high frequency, high ridership network, that looks to be a little bit compromised because the extension of service east of Sunrise Mall on that map is not shown. So if looking at this and the networks being studied going in the future, the high coverage network obviously augments and improves everything in tonight's agenda item between RT and the city of Folsom, and I'll be proud to second the motion that Andy has put on the table and conclude my comments there. Thank you.
We appreciate that. Vice Chair Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam City Manager, and to your team, thank you for helping lead change. This has really been a big few years for regional transit, and Andy Morin has really been a pleasure to have as not only at the helm first as vice chair under Jay Schneer and then as chair. He told me tonight, and I had a hard time believing it, but he's been on this board for 12 years. And so all those people who think term limits can be a good thing, and maybe they can, there's a case for that. I don't think that this would have been done without you, Andy, and without your leadership, because you're very good at bringing people together. And this, in some ways, is a reflection of all the progress we've made at regional transit, and you said that. But I also think it's a reflection of the progress that the region's making in understanding the value of transit in general. And as we go forward, not only with this action tonight, but also hopefully in bringing the region closer together, as you mentioned in your comments. I want you to know how grateful I am for what you've done here on this board. It's not lost on me either that we only have a few more months to spend with you, although you'll have your Monday nights back. You're feel free to come back. Nothing says that to be a board member you have to be elected to something. So maybe we can find a spot for you, but this is truly a historic moment for historic Folsom and for regional transit.
Thanks, Steve. I think we all echo those sentiments. Is there anyone else that would like to? Yes, Mr. Hume.
Just a quick question. Brent, did I understand the staff report correctly that Folsom will continue to maintain their own branding of the bus service?
Correct.
So the buses will still say Folsom Transit on them?
Yeah, the Folsom Stagecoach.
Actually,
Stage line.
we've had discussions. Regional Transit will definitely be on there as well, so it'll be like a hybrid, just to kind of maintain both. But it's definitely important to myself, and I'll certainly extend that to our city manager, that I want it known in the city of Folsom that that those buses are part of a much bigger team, but also their history as Folsom Stage Lines will stay with it as well. So, but
Okay.
Good question.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, anyone else? All right, we have a motion made by Director Morin, seconded by Vice Chair Hansen and Mr. Barnbaum. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Congratulations, thank you very much.
Motion carries at 95 votes. And if we can have the chair,
Now we can take
vice
the
chair,
photo.
and Director Moore, and we'll take a short, quick picture.
We're bigger. We'll
Okay,
put our faces in there somewhere.
yeah, you should be up there too. Go, Melissa. I'm good. Is this the city of Folsom?
Yeah, notice that.
I think they're with Folsom. Are you guys with Folsom? Are you guys with the city of Folsom? All right.
Next item.
Item number 14, information. Annexation effects on district-weighted voting presented by Brent Berniker.
All right.
Okay, Mr. Lonergan, please go ahead.
That really started off bad. I apologize again. If I'm turning red, yeah. I know. Whew. I'm starting to sweat up here. So the purpose of this information item is to provide the SAC-RT board with a few scenarios that have been discussed regarding annexation, what's in the issue paper and on the screen before us, and I'm going to just move one ahead. There we go, is a couple of scenarios. The first column is the current vote share as it stands today with the cities on the left. The next column is obviously the annexation of Folsom, what it will look like. And the third column is what it would look like if Citrus Heights and Elk Grove also joined in annexation. The one thing I want to mention before we go into any details is when we do these calculations, as you'll recall, the votes are determined based on three factors. There's a federal revenue allocation model. There's an incentive shares, that's 5 per city. And then there's the TDA revenue allocation or contractual revenue obligations that we look into. In the issue paper, we have 3 attachments before you, so you can look at all the detail behind that. But all the information that we did provide was based on the 2019 budgeted numbers. There's not much more to provide other than this information. We wanted to make this present so you guys can take a look at it. If you have any questions, David and I are here to answer any questions that you have.
Questions?
Okay?
Okay. Yes, informational.
Informational.
Thank you.
Moving on, item number 15, the general manager's report.
Good evening, Chair Kennedy, members of the board, and the public. Today, we will present a number of employee awards for long and dedicated service. For the last quarter, we have a total of 7 award recipients. They are not, 3 are not with us, actually 4 are not with us today due to their job duties, and 3 are with us tonight. The 4 employees who are still working right now cannot join us are Jesus, the Desma, Mechanical A, with 25 years of service. Thomas is here. Oh, Thomas is here, okay. Then Erica, 4-inch transit field inspector with 20 years of service, and Donna Alexander, bus operator with 30 years of service. Wow. So now we have 4 people with us today. First is Thomas McLean, bus operator with 40 years of service. Wow. Tracy Winston, bus operator with 25 years of service. Tracy? Joyce Adams Watkins, bus operator with 35 years of service. And Norm Freeman, bus operator with 25 years service. Thank you all for your dedication and service. And now would you take another picture?
Wow. And Supervisor Natoli was here the first day of each of these operators. Or so I've heard.
Smile.
And then a couple of updates.
Henry, you didn't tell us how many miles they logged in all those cumulative years.
We don't have enough time to talk. Recently, SACRT receives 2 awards. First, on October 3rd, SACRT accepted the Innovative Solutions Award from the Metro magazine, the world's most influential publication focused on transit. The honor was presented at North America's largest bus show, showcasing the latest industry trends to over 1,300 industry influencers in public and private transit. The award recognizes new transit initiatives and that streamline operations, improve customer satisfaction, and help transit operate more efficiently. SACRT and our partner Translock were honored for our on-demand Smart Ride microtransit service. Second award, last week, I was fortunate to attend the Sacramento Clean Cities Coalition Clean Air Ceremony Awards, where I accept the Clean Air Champion Award. As you know, SACRT will soon be electrifying our fleet of buses, beginning with a shuttle service between UC Davis and the Sacramento Medical Center with 12 big buses and 9 smaller electric buses for our Smart Ride service. In 1 to 2 years, we should be able to have over 55 electric buses on the street in this region. That will position us as an industry leader, not just in the state of California, but in the nation. And additionally, many people do not realize, but our fleet of 97 light rail vehicles is 100% electric too. Another update, 2 weeks ago, I had the privilege of attending the Sacramento Metro Chamber's study mission to Brooklyn along with SACRT's Chair Kennedy, Vice Chair Hansen, and the Director, our former Chair Chenier. During the trip, there were 2 sessions that focused on transportation and mobility. Chair Kennedy spoke eloquently and inspirationally about SACRT's service and the new innovative initiatives in front of over 120 people. Afterwards, an industry top expert named John Martin, who did a keynote speaker in our Transit Means Business Metro Chambers last year's event, he gave a keynote speech about the latest industry trend and the best industry practices. After listening to Chair Kennedy's speech, the keynote speaker commented by saying that he's thrilled to see SACRT is on the front row on many industry best practices. Something like that. During Mr. Martin's presentation, which is attached in the board package, he highlighted the importance of transit and mobility in order to make the city and the metropolitan regions across the country are desirable places to live and work. This is a very interesting piece of information I would like to share from those two slides from his presentation. As you can see, the funding for transit and the roadways has historically been linked in a 1-to-3 ratio in the past. If you look at the 2009 and the three gray areas for the roads, they're about $51, but public transit only $17. But in 2015, and both are $31 if you add that together. So that shows in recent years, city or metro regions across the nation are recognizing the need to fund transit at a more equitable rate to roads, as reflected in this slide. Also, 70% of transit-oriented ballot measures were passed in 2016 election, and only 30% were around that percentage of the road-related or oriented measures were passed in 2016 election. This new trend represents traits of winning cities across the nation, and I believe the Sacramento region can benefit from this new phenomenon. Do I have the chart for this one? Do I have pictures for this one? I do. Okay. I just want to have one more update, short update, and then I'm done. The 2018 California legislative session has wrapped up a couple weeks ago. SACRT worked collaboratively with Assembly Member Kevin McCarthy and Senator Richard Penn's office, and also Vice Chair Hansen's office, to author Assembly Bill 709. The new law was included a series of changes to SACRT Enabling Act designed to increase clarity and ensure accurate interpretation of the act. Just recently, we hosted Assembly Member McCarthy's district and the Capitol staff to celebrate the signing into the law. I think Chief of Staff from Vice Chair Hansen's office, Matt, was there too. I just want to thank everybody for the leadership, and especially Vice Chair. This concludes my GM report, and now I would like to introduce Kim Holm, SACRT's Equal Employment Opportunity Administrator, to present to the board her preliminary EEO annual work plan. As you see, we had our internal audit did that, so now it's her turn. Okay.
Chair Kennedy and the directors, good evening. My name is Kim Holman, and I am the Equal Employment Opportunity Officer for the Sacramento Regional Transit District. I'm going to make this brief for you. I am responsible for the administration of the EEO program, which includes the investigation and resolutions of complaints of discrimination and related activity. I report to the VP of Accountability and Performance and direct access to the GM, CEO, Henry Lee. Recently, I acquired a dotted line access reporting to you, the board. So because of that, I'm here to present a brief overview of the activities that my office is engaged in. The EO office scope includes 7 general areas: complaints and investigations, outreach, training, producing the Equal Employment Opportunity and Affirmative Action Plan, monitoring, analysis, and routine and regular reporting, both internally and to external control agencies as well. March 1, 2018, RT completed the Equal Employment Opportunity and Affirmative Action Plan for the 2018 through 2021 quadrennial. So that's the next few years, 4 years. I don't know if you're aware, but FTA changed the triennial requirement for EEO reporting to 4 years. So now we report every 4 years instead of every 3 years. And this is the first year starting that quadrennial period. July 2018, FTA, we completed the FTA audit for EEO, for the EEO program, and we were successful. We cleared it, no audit findings. Okay? So, when we're talking about complaints in the program, basically there are 11 formal EEO complaints at this time. That's about 1% of the general employment workforce, which is a pretty good ratio. Actually, it's 12 as of Friday, because I received a new formal complaint on Friday. But then we always have the extra EEO-related, non-EEO-related, managerial and supervisory consultation that goes along with that. Outreach generally includes job fairs, external correspondence with outside contacts, as well as expanded recruitment efforts. Training, well, this year we covered AB 1825, which is the state-mandated training for all managerial and supervisory staff within the state of California. There's a requirement for recertification every 24 months on that training. We also provided bullying in the workplace, unconscious bias, and diversity training. Specifically, those were focused towards our managers. We had 300, thus far, we've had 313 participants in our training programs. More than 50% of that has been management because, again, we have been focusing on giving management some additional training this year. Ongoing monitoring, statistic and data gathering, analysis, and reporting is also the last leg of my responsibilities. So, the preliminary plan for 2019 would include more of the same, everything that I've been doing. In addition to that, we want to improve on some of the current activities. Specifically, if there is a need to revise and update our subrecipient monitoring program, then I have an expectation and a plan to do that. And the EEO program wants to support the ATS online system, bringing that system online. The ATS is actually the applicant tracking system, which is a software application that enables electronic handling of recruitment and selection needs. The particular needs would be the hiring process from beginning to end. I also want to expand EEO training for rank and file. We've been focusing pretty much on new employee orientation and managers. The coming year, I really want to focus on getting all of our rank and file employees trained in equal employment and opportunity harassment. And I have a training program or plan to put that in place so that it doesn't interfere with day-to-day operations. And then finally, I would also, I plan to create a EEO manual that can always be distributed to all employees, existing and then all new employees, which will be a reference material for them. And hopefully they'll find it useful as time goes on while they're employed here. So that is the end of my presentation, unless you have any questions.
Any questions? Thank you, Ms. Holman.
You're welcome.
Mr. Lee, that's, you done? Okay. Great.
Next on the agenda is item number 16, Paratransit Inc. Board of Directors written report in your package from the September 17th, 2018 meeting. If Director Hume has any further comments.
I will just say that in a diluted moment, the Paratransit Board of Directors nominated me to be the next president of the board.
I was going to congratulate you, but then I remembered that you got nominated to be president of the board.
Okay, and moving on, item 17, Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority meeting of September 19th of 2018. If Director Harris has any additional comments.
Nothing to say. I'm afraid I missed the last meeting and Director Miller is not here.
Moving on, item 18, San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority meeting, written report of September 28th. If Director Hume has anything further to add, and he's shaking his head. Any other board reports, comments from directors?
Anything from the board? No.
Okay. Moving on, I will announce the closed session items. Conference with legal counsel pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, existing litigation, Laverne Cotier versus Sac RT, Superior Court Case 34-2018-00234834, and we will recess to closed session.
And do we expect to have anything to report out, council? No. Okay, great. Then we will recess into closed session.